Fresh from his triumph over the troll hag, Azhag the Slaughterer, mounted atop his fearsome Wyvern Skullmuncher, has led his bloodthirsty horde northward. Fueled by savage momentum and guided by the crown's sinister whispers, the Greenskin army smashed through the Empire's defences, leaving naught but fire and ruin in their wake. The thrill of victory blinded Azhag to his direction. His relentless march has pushed his horde too far north, beyond the lands of men, into the cursed Chaos Wastes, a realm where the frozen winds carry the whispers of dark gods, and the land itself rebels against all life. Here, the savage Greenskins find their match, an army of Chaos warriors led by a fearsome lord atop his mighty dragon. Vadrex, Beast Slayer, lies in wait. The gods of Chaos demand carnage, and the frozen tundra will soon be stained red as two brutal forces clash for supremacy. In the cold embrace of the Chaos Wastes, only one will survive the slaughter. Will it be the Greenskins driven by sheer savagery, or will the warriors of Chaos prove too powerful even for Azhag's might?
Hello my friends, this is Dragonheart, the Prince of Wales, and welcome back to my channel. Today we have 2,000 points of Orcs and Goblins versus the Warriors of Chaos. We're against my friend Paul, also known as Lord Rex or so. That's his YouTube channel name. If you want to go and check him out, then by all means. He has a very popular series called Update Monday, which he uploads every Monday. This was a very fun battle for a lot of various different reasons, which I will get into in the post-battle report at the end. In a moment I will be doing the lists, and then we'll go over the scenario, and then we'll actually have the proper report itself. But I would appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video. It does take quite a while for me to edit and organise all of these, so any sort of help would be most appreciated. But without further ado, let us have a look at the lists. So first up we have 2,000 points of the Orcs and Goblins list. This is pretty much an experimental list for me. There's quite a few units in this list that I've never used before and I wanted to try out. So to start off with, we have our characters at 635 points. Our Black Orc War Boss, which is of course Azhag the Slaughterer. He is 337 points. He has a hand weapon, full plate armor, shield. He's my general, he's riding the Wyvern. He has the Giant's Blade and he has Troll Hide trousers. Next to him we have the Night Goblin Big Boss, 73 points, hand weapon and an additional hand weapon for a +1 attack. He's riding the Giant Cave Squig, and he has Walloper's One-Hit Wonder. And then to complete the characters we have my Goblin Oddnob, 225 points with a hand weapon. He's a level 4 wizard, he's riding the Giant Wolf, he has Ruby Ring of Ruin, and he has Sword of Might, and he has the Law of Elementalism. Next up we have our core, 602 points. We have 20 Black Orcs at 278 points. They have hand weapons, full plate armor, they are stubborn, and they have full command. Next up we have 7 Goblin Wolf Rider Mob, 129 points. They have hand weapons, short bows, light armor, they have full command, and also have the Spider Banner for the poisoned attacks. Next up we have 20 Night Goblins at 127 points. Hand weapons, shields, they have a boss, a standard, and a musician, and they also have 2 fanatics that they can release as well. And to finalise our core, we have 6 Night Goblin Squig Herds at 68 points. They have 2 Squig Herders and 2 Thrust-in Spears. Next up we have our special at 356 points. We have 14 Orc Boarboy Mob at 356 points. Hand weapons, cavalry spears, heavy armor, big guns, and they have full command, plus they have the Spiteful Shield on the champion, and they have the big red raggedy flag to help with the combat res. And finally for our Ray, we have 295 points. We have a Mangler Squig at 95 points. He has the Colossal Fang-filled Gob and heavy armor, and we have our Giant at 200 points with his Giant's Club and light armor. But also we have a mercenary unit, 3 Badland Ogre Bulls at 112 points. They have hand weapons, light armor, 3 Iron Fists, and have a champion. So here we have 2,000 points of the Warriors of Chaos. Starting with the characters, we have 982 points. The Chaos Lord Vadrex Beast Slayer. He has hand weapon, full plate armor, shield, general, Mark of Chaos, Nurgle. He's on a Chaos Dragon. He has the Ogre Blade, a Brazen Collar, 2 Favour of the Gods, and an Enchanting Aura. We then have a Sorcerer Lord called Simmerslith the Crazed at 360 points. He has a hand weapon, heavy armor, the Mark of Zinch, level 4 Wizard, a Demonic Mount, Infernal Puppet, Spell Familiar, Favour of the Gods, Armor of Meteoric Iron, and Battle Magic. Then we go on to the core at 517 points. We have 32 Chaos Marauders called the Madmen. They have hand weapons, flails, light armor, Mark of Khorne, Marauder Chieftain, and Standard Bearer. We have 5 Chaos Warhounds, who are called the Toxic Mutts at 45 points. They have Claws and Fangs, which are their hand weapons. They have Armoured Hide 1, Poisoned Attacks, and Vanguard. And to complete the core, we have 20 Chaos Marauders called the Shielded. They have hand weapons, light armor, shields, Mark of Chaos, Marauder Chieftain, and a Standard Bearer. Then we go to special at 329 points. We have 3 Dragon Ogres called Kodak's Chosen at 196 points. They have great weapons, heavy armor, and Shartak. And then we also have 2 Dragon Ogres with exactly the same again. And then finally we have Ray, 170 points. We have a gigantic, very gigantic spawn of chaos. I just don't know what happened there. I think the CD got trapped in my brain then. But we have a gigantic spawn of chaos at 170 points, which has a slashing talons, gnashing maws, heavy armor, which is its scaly skin, and it is a gigantic spawn of Nurgle. So we rolled the dice and we ended up with a 5, which is the Mountain Pass scenario. And what we've done, much like the last battle report, we used the square-based podcast rules, basically, which follow basically use of the terrain and things like that. They use them for tournaments quite a lot of the time in like Nottingham and places like that. So we've got for layout A, which you can see you've got 2 buildings, which in this case are towers, 7 inches from the top and bottom of the board. You've then got 2 hills and 2 forests. We didn't actually have any hills that we could use when we were playing this battle, so what we ended up doing is having 4 lots of forest, basically where the 2 hills are as well. So we rolled for our spells, and these are the spells that we have. So for the Orcs and Goblins, we have Flaming Sword, Plague of Rust, Summon Elemental Spirit, and Itchy Nuisance. And for the Warriors of Chaos, we have the Pillar of Fire, Arcane Urgency, Oaken Shield, Curse of Cowardly Fight, and Blue Fire. So we'll start off with deployment, and Paul deployed first. So on his left flank, he has 2 Dragon Ogres. Next to them, he has a Sorcerer Lord on Demonic Mount. Next to that, he has a Chaos Lord on Dragon. And then next to that, he has a Chaos Spawn. In his center, he has 32 Chaos Marauders. And then on his right flank, he has 20 Chaos Marauders, 3 Dragon Ogres, and finally 5 Chaos Warhounds. On my left flank, I have some Mercenary Ogre Bulls. I have a Squig Herd. I have 20 Night Goblins. I have my Mangler Squig. I have my Night Goblin Big Boss on Cave Squig. Then in my center, I have my Orc Boar Boys at the front, and I have my 20 Black Orcs in the rear. And then on my right flank, I have my Goblin Wolf Riders out wide. I have my Goblin Odd Knob on Wolf. I have my Giant, and I have my Black Orc War Boss on Wyvern. Paul rolled a 3 and I rolled a 5, so I got to choose who went first. I elected that Paul deploy first and have first turn. Paul moved everything up the board, making sure to stay out of charge range of my units, especially my Boar Boys, who have quite a large charge range with Swift Stride. We worked out that where the tiles of each board panels meet are exactly 24 inches apart. So this was a very good measurement tool by eye when working out where to move units. Paul was able to cast Arcane Urgency, which allowed him to move his Chaos Spawn again after its initial movement. This allowed the spawn to finish 4 inches in front of my Boar Boys, very nearly having a turn 1 combat at the start of the game. I moved up most of my army to gain ground towards his. I moved my Ogre Bulls the maximum of 6 inches on the left flank. The Squig Herd and the Night Goblin units moved just past the tower on my left flank. The random movement of my Mangler Squig meant that he travelled quite far into the centre of the board away from my main lines. My Black Orcs and Wyvern crept a few inches up the board, quite limited with their movement, as this scenario does mean that deployment is quite squished together, especially if you have larger ranks. My Shaman also moved inwards a few inches to make sure I was in range to try and dispel things or get my own spells off. My Goblin Wolf Riders moved up the right flank and targeted the 2 Dragon Ogres with their poisoned attacks, making a wound and getting 1 Dragon Ogre down to 3 wounds remaining. I declared 2 charges, my Boar Boys and my Giant, into the Chaos Spawn. My thinking was that this was right in front of me in my line of sight. inhibiting me from being able to maneuver properly. The boars were a straight charge and the giant into the flank. The only spell I was able to get off this turn was Summon Elemental Spirit, where I placed it in front of the Chaos Lord on Dragon. So we had combat. I was able to get a wound off the spawn from my giant. The boar boys got 7 regular attacks and 1 extra for the champion, so 8 attacks in total. They rolled poorly, and any attacks that we did get were easily saved by the spawn. The spawn won combat by taking out my back rank of boars and winning combat res, despite suffering a flank charge. Combat remained where it was for Paul's next turn. The Dragon Ogres charged my Goblin Wolf Riders on my left flank, completely decimating them and easily dismantling them, with the Dragon Ogres then reinforcing with a view to cause mayhem and potentially get a charge off into my Shaman. The Sorcerer moved up slightly, just settling behind the main focus of combat at the centre of the board. The Lord on Dragon got a charge off into the flank of my Giant. Let the model gore commence. The Chaos Lord easily killed my Giant. We rolled for Timber and Paul won the roll off, so the Giant would not cause damage to his units. As the Boar Boys and Chaos Spawn were in a continuation of combat from the previous turn, I now do not get my charge bonuses and initiative bonuses, so the Spawn got to attack me first. He did multiple wounds to me, which I was not able to save. The Spawn killed the Boar Boys where they stood, without me being able to make a single save. Paul controlled combat at the centre of the board at this early stage and had bagged nearly 400 points from the Boars and 200 for the Giant. This was a big blow to my army. As my Boars were completely wiped out, this caused a panic check on my Goblin Big Boss on Cave Squig. As the Cave Squig was quite close to them, the Black Orcs did not need to do a check as they have the Ignore Panic rule. The Goblin Big Boss rolled high and failed his panic test. He fled 16 inches backwards and reformed deep down the board far away from my front lines. Knowing that I needed to try and score some points to get back into this game, I charged my Black Orcs that were behind the Orc Boar Boys into the front of the Chaos Spawn and charged my Black Orc Warboss on Wyvern into the Chaos Lord on Dragon. I charged my Squig Herd into the Chaos Marauders, and the random movement of my Mangler Squig enabled me to reach this combat and have it 2v1 in my favour. Squig Herd and Mangler Squig versus Chaos Marauders. I decided to release one of my fanatics who moved forward towards the second unit of Marauders that was not in combat, stopping just short of them. However, during the movement phase, this fanatic passed through this unit, killing 2 Marauder soldiers. I repositioned my Night Goblins to face the Warhounds. I moved my Ogre Bulls up the left flank to get within charge range of the Dragon Ogres. As my Goblin Shaman on Giant Wolf was in charge range of his Dragon Ogres on my right flank, I decided to retreat back into the woods. This put them out of charge range and still within range to cast spells or attempt dispels. My Night Goblin Big Boss on Cave Squig gets his random movement and rolls relatively well. My intention is to get him to assist the Black Orcs in combat and get into the flank of the Chaos Spawn. I land just 2 inches short of the spawn, but at least I am in a position to potentially affect combat in the next turn. Speaking of combat, in my turn 2 we have my Squig Herd and Mangler Squigs versus the Chaos Marauders. I was initially feeling quite confident about this combat until we both double check and triple checked the profile of the Mangler Squig. Paul said to me before my Mangler landed into combat, does it cause terror or fear, as he would need to do a terror check. I said, well, I'm pretty sure it at least causes fear. It's a giant piranha with legs and has a big old mouthful of serrated teeth with chains attached to it for the Night Goblins to try and control these massive beasts. Think of a Rancor from Star Wars almost. Well, we were both shocked to discover that it does not cause terror and does not cause fear. So combat continues with this check, and the good news for me is that I have charged in with my units, I get the better initiative, and I get to attack first. I have 10 attacks for my Squig Herd, and due to the Marauders being a weaker member of the Chaos roster, I am hitting on 4s. This means that on a 4, 5 or 6, I am hitting them. I roll, and I make 1 hit. 1 out of 10, at a 50% dice roll chance to hit. We both laughed and we couldn't believe it. I then attempt to wound with this 1 hit and I miss. No wounds out of 10 from the Squig Herd. But not to panic. I still have my giant big purple Mangler Squig with serrated teeth and big metal chains attached to it.
that somehow does not cause fear and terror, but he gets to attack. I have 5 attacks, and again, I'm hitting on 4s. I roll 5 dice, and 0 hits. I couldn't believe it. By this point, we are practically on the floor laughing. The dice giveth to Paul, and they taketh away from me. Out of 15 attacks, hitting on 4s, only 1 actually hits, and I'm unable to wound. The Marauders win combat, and the Mangler Squig ends up fleeing down the board back towards where the Black Orcs are positioned, just parallel to them. The Squig herd also falls back. However, we did notice a few turns later that we did this wrong and totally ignored the Squigs Go Wild rule, whereby if a Squig herd breaks and flees from combat, it does 2d6 range of damage in inches to friends or foes at a d3 strength 5 hit with an AP of -1. This obviously could have made a difference to some things. Max range, it would have been 12 inches, which looking at the image would have got the second unit of Marauders and the Chaos Warhounds. However, we chose to play them as fleeing, and they then subsequently passed the leadership test and reformed later on. As we played them as fleeing, this caused a panic check on my Night Goblin on Cave Squig, who rolls insanely high. I think he rolled a 5 or a 6, and he ends up fleeing from the nearest enemy, which is the Chaos Spawn, and ends up back against the tower within this image. I can't believe it. This thing just likes to flee. So as I had lost the combat that I should have done, well, let's see if I can do well in the combat that I shouldn't do well in. It's General v General, Wyvern v Dragon. The Chaos Lord and Dragon take 3 wounds off the Wyvern, taking him down to 4 wounds remaining. My Wyvern gets his giant blade into the wing of the dragon and is able to inflict 2 wounds which are not saved, so the Lord has 8 wounds remaining. Combat res is a win by 1 for the Chaos Lord, and I fall back in good order with the Dragon Lord following up, so that combat continues in the next turn. We then have the Spawn versus Black Orcs. 3 Orcs are felled by the mighty Spawn, and the Orcs do nothing and are unable to lay a glove on the Spawn. I lose combat, but as I am stubborn, I choose not to make a break test and fall back in good order. The Spawn follows up for combat, so this also continues into the next turn. Dragon Ogres on the far side of the board charge into my Ogre Bulls. This is exciting for me, as I am looking forward to seeing how the Ogre Bulls do, as this is my first time ever using them. I release my second and final Fanatic and place it in front of the Chaos Warhounds. As within the rules, you are able to release Fanatics during either your own or your opponent's start of turn subphase. My intention was to release it, then during Paul's compulsory move phase, it would go through Paul's Warhounds and take them out, maybe even potentially going higher up the board and into the Dragon Ogres. As during the first release of Fanatics, you get to determine which direction they go in, then all subsequent directions after this are cast on a scatter dice and 2d6. Unfortunately for me, this plan goes up in the air straight away, as the Fanatic yeets himself on his own ball and chain by rolling a double. Any double that is rolled means the Fanatic unalives himself and he is immediately removed from play. Yet again, another plausibly good plan up in smoke. The Marauders that just defeated the Squigs charge into the flank of the Night Goblins. The Chaos Sorcerer moves further inwards towards the centre of the board to further assist with spells and controlling the space. The Dragon Ogres that defeated my Wolf Riders previously on the near side get a flank charge into my Wyvern. When we have combat, I decide to aim my attacks into the Dragon Ogres. By this point, I'm in a very dire situation and I'm thinking that I'll try and take as many points off the board as I can and try and redeem myself where possible. I inflict 3 wounds on the Dragon Ogre, who has 3 wounds remaining, and he is unable to make any saves on this, so 1 model dies and is removed from play. By this point, I'm hoping that I can get my stomp attacks into the other Dragon Ogre and roll well. However, I do not live long enough to do this. The Chaos Lords gets me down to 1 wound remaining. The Dragon then gets his attacks and inflicts 2 further wounds on me. I am able to save 1, but the other goes through and my Wyvern is defeated in combat. The Lord overruns and ends up going forward a few inches, parallel to the Black Orcs. The remaining Dragon Ogre model tests the restraint and reforms to yet again line up another potential charge into my Shaman. By this point, the game is totally gone for me. The near side of the board has my Goblin Oddnob ducking and diving, trying to get away from potential charges, and the Black Orcs that, well, to be fair, are doing okay in combat,
they haven't been defeated and have held up the Chaos Spawn, but again, would need to roll ridiculously well to kill it, which has not happened all game. This combat continues within this turn, and a few more orcs are slain, with the spawn following up again. My remaining fanatic, who is positioned behind the marauders, stays where he is as the dice were yet again not kind to me. I would have preferred them to have moved back into the marauders and out the other side where the centre of the board is, but that did not happen. The Night Goblins that were charged by the marauders lose combat, losing 5 goblins. We were not 100% on how to move them backwards, as their movement would have been right on the tower, so we decided to treat it as going through dangerous terrain. The Night Goblins suffered a further 2 wounds to the terrain and ended up on the other side of the tower. The marauders were able to reform. The final combat this turn was the Dragon Ogres versus Ogre Bulls. The Dragon Ogres attacked first and did 8 wounds to me, which I was not able to save, killing 2 Ogre Bulls and leaving the remaining Ogre Bull on 1 wound remaining. He was not able to wound the Dragon Ogres, and his final wound was taken off him when the Dragon Ogres got their stomp attacks, easily winning and reforming behind the tower right in front of my Night Goblins that recently moved there. Oh dear. I continue to use some really good dancing strategies from my Goblin Shaman on Wolf, and again move away from the Dragon Ogres and out of range from any potential charges. The remaining Fanatic gets his roll and permanently ceases to exist as he rolls a double. Oh dear. I'm able to charge my Mangler Squig into the flank of the Chaos Spawn, which helps me out. Combat continues in the big slog at the centre of the board, and 5 Black Orcs are killed. This actually helps me somewhat, as the Chaos Lord can no longer see line of sight for a potential charge on the Black Orc. We are able to do some wounds in this combat, and the Chaos Spawn is down to 3 wounds, then 2 wounds with a further attack from the Mangler. However, the Mangler is killed by the Spawn, as he only had 2 wounds remaining going into this combat. Combat resolution is a stalemate, albeit I have now lost the Mangler Squig, and the Chaos Spawn is getting the better share of results against the Black Orcs. I now have 9 Black Orc models remaining. My Squig Herd charges the Marauders, and the Night Goblin on Cave Squig charge into the Hounds. The Hounds are killed easily, and Orcs and Goblins have claimed their first unit wipe of the game. Huzzah! The Squig Herd does well, killing 6 Marauders and pushing them backwards. They fall back a few inches in good order, and the Squig Herd follow up for a future turn of combat. The Night Goblins that fled previously have rallied by passing their panic attack and declare a charge into the Dragon Ogres. Yes, I acknowledge that this is a foolish charge, but given where they have ended up on the board, my hope was to try and get a cheeky wound or 2 off them, and then get the big boss on Cave Squig to get over there and assist after mopping up the Warhounds. Sadly, I needed 6s to do anything on the Dragon Ogres, which I did not get. The Dragon Ogres kill loads of Goblins and won combat, and then caught the fleeing unit, completely destroying the Night Goblins. The Chaos Lord repositioned himself so that in his next turn he could get a flank charge into the Black Orcs. The solitary Dragon Ogre model also repositioned himself, again looking for a charge towards my Goblin Shaman. Over to Stalemate Central here, we have Black Orcs that are down to 7 Black Orcs remaining. Combat is still ongoing and not finished. This again goes into the next turn. The Squig Herd have more joy as the Marauders charge into them. The Squigs roll well and kill more members of the unit and win in combat. The Marauders flee and the Squigs catch them, destroying the unit with a view to go towards the second Marauder unit behind them. You'll notice I have a habit of not talking much about magic in these battle reports. Well, that's because there wasn't really any magic that I could do. The Chaos Sorcerer has the Infernal Puppet Arcane item. This means that every time I tried to cast magic, I would have to roll an extra d6, so essentially rolling 3 dice rather than 2 and discarding the highest value. This meant that I wasn't able to cast a lot of my spells, as I could roll a 1, 3 and 6 but have to remove the 6 and wouldn't have enough to cast, or I would cast the spell on a very low number, just casting it, and then the spell would easily be beat. This was a massive nuisance for me throughout the game, and I had no natural counter to this. I suppose I could have tried to charge the Sorcerer with the Shaman, but would have been unlikely to have killed it in combat. But then every time I tried to do Ruby Ring Ruin, it would not be cast, so I was completely magically stifled. I I again moved my Shaman away from things, getting out of charge ranges, as again the Dragon Ogres were looking for a charge on them. The Night Goblin on Cave Squid gets a charge into the Dragon Ogres on the far side, and I'm finally able to have my one-time use of Wallopers one-hit wonder, and was able to kill one Dragon Ogre model. The two remaining Dragon Ogres attacked back and rolled really high, taking all the wounds from the Cave Squig and yeeted him off the board. My left flank has now been completely taken. The Squig Herd engage in combat with the second unit of Marauders and is able to kill a few of them. However, the Marauders do really well and wipe out the majority of the unit. This is the moment in the battle where we realise that we played the Squig Herd incorrectly and that they should have died earlier on and done the Squigs Go Wild rule. We instead do this here, and the Squigs are removed from the board as we only had one Squig and two Herders remaining. Stalemate Central is still going on, and the Black Orcs are down to 5 models remaining: the Champion, Musician, Standard Bearer, and 2 additional Black Orc Warriors. I was finally able to get Plague of Rust off on the Chaos spawn, but it was much too late in the battle to make any sort of difference. I did say to Paul before going into turn 5 that I probably should call the game and concede here, as I am definitely done for, but we decided to play the turn out to see if Paul could completely wipe my remaining 2 units. His Sorcerer gets off Blue Fire onto my Shaman, and I am unable to make any saves, dying instantly to it. That just leaves the brave Black Orc units in play. They get charged in the flank by the Chaos Lord and get completely annihilated where they stand. It's quite fitting that it was brave Leonorcus and his band of Black Orcs that got killed by the evil Chaos Warriors while holding the lines for so long, much like Leonidas and the 300 Spartans did against ancient Persia. Final score is 2,000 points to 217 points. If this was a tournament, it would be 19 points to 1. And what we'll do now, we will go and have a review and debrief of the battle. So there we have it, 2,000 points to 217 points. An absolute complete annihilation of the Orcs and Goblins. First of all, I want to say a thank you to Paul. I really enjoyed the game. Enjoyed the company. Maybe not the game. I enjoyed the company. It's always a good time and good fun when I play against Paul. I've said this on the channel before, but he has been absolutely instrumental in me initially getting into Warhammer, playing the tabletop, and then teaching me many of the rules and getting me sort of involved in this. And we are hoping that we can perhaps enter some tournaments in the future, maybe do like a doubles tournament, that sort of thing. We did talk after the battle that we just had, where we said maybe we could do like a Nomadic Warg 1,000 points and a Chaos Warriors 1,000 points, where he can do all the spells and dispels and stuff, and I can just get up on board and just yeet into things basically. So that's something maybe we can look to do if we can get ourselves involved in the tournament. That would be great. But like I said, first of all, thank you to Paul. He has been amazing, like I said. The battle itself, I think it was pretty much nailed on result before the first dice roll, I think. His list was very strong. We'll start off with his list. His list was very strong. He had so many things that he could do. He had 900 points in just characters, which is insane. His Chaos Lord had 10 wounds. It was so tough, had so many good saves and things that I couldn't do much to it. I took 2 wounds off it all game, and that's all I could do. And that was with my Wyvern, which was very much losing combat. His Sorcerer Lord on the Demonic Mount had so many cool items and things, and the fact that I would try to do a spell, I would, it'd be cast on like a 9+, and I'd roll a 6 and a 2, so that would be like an 8, plus your wizard level, a 4, you're on 12, you're thinking, great, I've cast it, and it's like, you gotta roll 3rd dice, you have to roll 3 dice. So I could roll like a 1, a 2, and a 6, and whereas I'd take that 6 usually, it's like, nope, you've got to remove it, you've got a 1 and a 2, your wizard level is level 4, you're only getting to 7, you're not casting the spell, or if I am casting the spell, I'm getting it on a very, very low number, which gives him a lot of room to maneuver and dispel that. So I only got off 2 spells the entire game. I got off Summon Elemental Spirit on right at the start of the game, which he dispelled immediately at the start of his turn, so that did nothing. And then we did the Plague of Rust, which we got off right at the end of the game, by which point the game was done. The game was done on turn 2, I think. But like I said, the game was pretty much done beforehand, really, because his list was so strong. My list was very experimental. This was a very experimental list for me. I have a lot of Orcs and Goblins units that I want to try out and use. And while this list wasn't, a meta chasing kind of list, it was very much a list that I wanted to see how they did. I haven't used Black Orcs before. This was my first time using them. I thought the Black Orcs did pretty well. They didn't win combat, but they are very good at whittling down units and holding things in play. And I thought they did quite well against the Chaos Spawn, and on another day, they might have done better. Mistake I made was I didn't give them shields. If I'd given them shields, they wouldn't have died as quick, and I might have done something different. Who knows? But the Black Orcs did very well. The ogres, we had the ogres, the mercenaries on the left flank. I was excited to use them. I thought that they might do something in this battle, and just a cool model. I've always wanted to use mercenaries in a battle, and I thought this would be a good time to use them. I think they were probably paired against the wrong unit. I think Ogre versus Dragon Ogre battle, they were never going to do well against them, and they just lost very, very easily. I don't think they did a wound. I can't remember. I don't think they did a wound. They were just literally just taken out where they stood. I think I lost 8 wounds straight away, and then I had 1 wound remaining on 1 model. I'll use them. I'll definitely use them again, and I might equip them with some different things and stuff, because I might have gone under-equipped with them. But they were a little bit disappointed, so we'll have to wait and see how I do with them in the future. The Goblin Wolf Riders on the other flank, they had poison attacks, they had the Spider Banner, they did 1 wound on the other Dragon Ogres, but they couldn't really do an awful lot to them, really. As soon as they charge, they're gone. You know, they're chaff, they're there for chaff, they're there for a bit of mobility. I feel like they work better in Nomadic Warg than maybe they do here. Maybe in here, those points could have gone to something else, and I could have given them something else, poison attacks, so that might have been more favourable. But in Nomadic Warg list, they're quite good at just rushing up the flanks, shooting things, getting in the way of things, trying to control like spaces of the board. But they just died instantly here. My wizard, as I alluded to, just did nothing. So he just danced around. He just went into the forest, come back out, did a bit peekaboo a few times, ran at the centre of the board, and he's like, nah, you haven't got me, and then literally blew fire straight in the face. Ugh. Gone. That's all he did all game. My Wyvern, I had to throw my Wyvern into combat early on against his best unit, which he was never going to do well against, so my Wyvern died just there and then. My Giant died very early as well. I think my biggest mistake in this battle was probably my deployment. The mountain paths scenario, you're playing the board sort of from where you stand on a tabletop, you're playing left to right, right to left, rather than up to down. So when you play up to down, you've got a lot more boardroom, but when you play on the other side, you haven't got as much, so it's a lot less deployment space. And of course, I had a tower on my side which also took up some of the room, so that meant that I didn't actually have much deployment room at all to use. So by the time I started putting things in, I'm thinking, right, where am I going to put these boys? Where am I going to put them? So it ended up being a case of my Black Orcs are in reserve, my Giant is sort of on standby, my Wyvern is sort of on standby, and my big block of ball boys are right at the front, taking up a lot of room because there's 7 ranks of them and they're a big block. And they did nothing, did they? They did absolutely nothing. Disappointed. I think they work very well in Nomadic Warg, but when it comes to the Orcs and Goblins list, I think maybe you take a smaller unit of them if you do take them, and maybe you use a unit of 7 of them and put them on the flank with poisoned attacks or something instead of the Wolf Riders. Maybe that's a better sort of situation to use them in. But here they didn't do much at all. They didn't really do anything with like their impact hits or anything. And then by the time they didn't win combat, they lost a whole rank straight away. I had to commit them with the Giant. I had to commit them with the Wyvern. I had to commit with the Ball Boys and everything. The Black Orcs, and everything just got sort of meat grinded, for lack of a better term, in that centre of the board. And I literally just like you know when you see like a conveyor belt like a Simpsons where you just throwing things, and it just cuts to the other side of it. It's like, oh, this is good, and then you come to the other side, it's just dead. It was like that. I was just like, have another unit, dead. So, yeah, disappointing. I've been on a very good winning streak of Warhammer The Old World. So, in my last 4 games before this game, I beat Paul with Tomb Kings versus his Skaven. We then played our final match of Tomb Kings versus Bretonia, and I won that, where I finally defeated the Green Knight. Then I had our other battle then, which was Nomadic Warg versus Warriors of Chaos, which I won. My Nomadic Warg just flattened his units in that battle. I think, to be fair with him, he was still trying to understand the meta of Warriors of Chaos, in much the same way where I think I had a better idea of Nomadic Warg going into that battle, because I've watched some battle reports, I've done some reading up on my lore and stuff, so I got into that a little bit. And then my match with Matthew on the last battle report, where we played the Orc and Goblin Civil War with 2 arcane journal lists, and I won that one as well. So I've had a 4-game winning streak. And Paul, the 3 battles against me that I just mentioned, he lost. And he played his friend Cameron, who also had an Orcs and Goblins list, and lost against them. So I've won 4, he's lost 4. So he was due a win, and he got that win right at the end of the year to complete the year out. So well done to him. Like I say, he played well. He had a very good list. I think it's a list that's very good in the meta as well. And I'm sort of scratching my head and thinking, how am I going to take out that Chaos Lord on Dragon? It's one of those things I got to think of now, and think of like my list and what I'm going to do, what I'm going to change, all that kind of stuff. A couple of fun moments from the battle. The 15 rolls. What happened with the 15 rolls? Like, I'm going to do a test on the channel, so there's a video going up at the end of this week where I do a little experiment with some dice, and I do like 3 lots of rolls and see what I hit and what's the average kind of rolls you should sort of be getting roughly. 15 hits and you're hitting on 4s. 1, 2 and 3 is a miss. 4, 5 and 6 is a hit. 15 dice, you expect to get like 6 or 7. If you get 4, it's sort of below average. If you get like 8 or 9, it's above average. I get 1 hit. And that hit doesn't even wound. And it's like, I was already demoralized going into that combat because I was like, oh wait, yeah, it's at least got fear, if not terror. And we look and we spend a few minutes looking, and it's like, no, the Mangler Squig doesn't cause fear or terror. It's like, what? It does not cause fear or terror. This thing is a big giant piranha. It has, it's got these giant legs. It's all gob. It's got saliva running down its face. It's got massive serrated teeth. It's got goblins that have to chain these things up because they're so vicious and so ridiculously strong. And there's, if it's like the Squig Hoppers or the Squig Herd, fair enough. The little punch bag ones that you just prod around with your staff. That was the goblins hurting them. This is the big Mangler Squig. This thing should be terrifying, and it's not. It doesn't cause terror. It doesn't cause fear. So I feel like that's something that should be addressed in the FAQ, or maybe in a second edition of this game, because I feel like that's kind of weakening the model a little bit. I compare this model to the Tomb King's Scorpion. So the Tomb King's Scorpion, it costs 70 points. It does cause terror, and for an extra 5 points you can get the Ambusher rule, which means that I can deploy it later on in the game on like turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. I can roll on dice and it comes on the board, and I can choose where it comes on the board, and it means I can go after like my opponent's cannons, artillery. They got like lords at the back line, that kind of thing. So I feel like with the Mangler Squig, it's 95 points, so it's a little bit more than a Scorpion, but it's not as good as a Scorpion. And I feel like they need to either give it terror or fear, give it poison attacks maybe, or instead give it something like Ambusher. So just something to make it stronger, because it was in combat and it didn't do anything in combat against Marauders, so it wasn't even his best unit. Out of the list he had, apart from the Chaos Warhounds, the Marauders were very much the chaff units, weren't they? They weren't the really good things. They weren't the Dragon Ogres, they weren't the Lord, they weren't the Sorcerer, they weren't the Chaos Spawn. They're the Marauders. They were there to get wounds and get kills on them there, and didn't lay a glove on them. So disappointed with that. I do feel like that's something they need to look at in the future GW and see what sort of things they can do to update them. But yeah, overall, it was an interesting battle. I enjoyed the experience. It's made me think about what I can work on and what I can do next. I have always said that I enjoy the games and the battles, and I'm not a meta chaser kind of person where I'm looking to try and win every single game and go ha ha and point you in your face. I'm not one of these people that just want to play games with my friends and enjoy it, and if I can learn things along the way, that's even better as well. I'm going to end the video here anyway. As I mentioned in the video earlier on at the start, if you could drop a like on this video, it would mean the world to me. I spend quite a lot of time editing these. It takes a lot of time to do the intros, get all the photos uploaded, put the music on, and all that kind of stuff as well. So if you could drop a like on the video, it would very much mean the world to me, and it might help get a few more eyes on the channel who enjoy Warhammer or the Old World. Anyway guys, I've been Dragonheart. Until next time, goodbye.